Okay, welcome everyone. This is our April 1st Public Health and Safety Committee meeting. And we're going to start with the approval of the minutes. We have the minutes from March. Can we go ahead and approve those?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we'll approve the minutes and we'll move on to the second item here, the fire company meeting. So we are trying to make sure that we have a representative attending these meetings. My thanks to Cindy, you were able to do the last one.
It is 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay.
So I introduced myself and just said when we were available and interested in partnering, but it was really, I think if there's any discussion to be had or any formative issues, we could certainly use this as an opportunity to invite folks for it larger.
Is it the whole company?
No, just the board. Okay. And they really run through budget and financials, but you know, it's nice.
8 o'clock, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay, so what, I don't know, is anyone willing to go? I mean, this is Monday already. Monday at 8.
Sorry.
I get home, it depends if I can get home in time. So maybe we'll sort it out. We'll try to have one of us go.
Yeah, and like I said, worst case scenario, like if there's somewhere legitimately like the three of you can't do it, I'm willing to serve as a fallback now and then.
So I don't think that you should do that.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Just because there was nothing substantive, and Bill Henderson was pretty clear, like we really come in and do bills and financials and minutes and any updates. So I would hate to see your time utilized on a Monday night for something.
Yeah.
Where I feel like if there was something of importance, we would reach out. I teach Monday nights too, like till Monday night too this term, but I can try to be there.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's you and I figure it out.
Okay.
I'll look at my schedule again.
Yeah,
Because
that's
if
fine.
I can do it, I'll go.
And I think that if we miss one, I am confident that Bill would probably let us know.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. Let's not make it another night meeting for our manager.
Yeah,
Thank
no,
you.
not at all. There's no reason for you to come out. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
I'll put it in my calendar. I assume I'm going Monday.
Okay, I'll be in touch with you. All right, so we're going to go. What we want to try to do is make some time for public comment because we often have a full agenda and we run out of time at the end. So we thought we would move it up front. And let's see who's on Zoom. We have welcome to the mayor, and Ira is also here, and Michelle is here. Okay, so I guess no public comment then.
That'll be correct.
So traffic concerns, we have worked through a process, thanks to the manager and our chief. We have a process for reviewing these complaints, and we had an equipment challenge, for a while, related to the supply chain and all that. But now I think we have things back in order, and we also have the traffic engineer's review of Sabine. So, Samantha.
Yeah, so a brief summary. So the traffic engineer took a look at the data that was collected with the caveats that were given to this committee about, what that data may or may not mean. And he himself went out there and observed the traffic and looked at the road on the whole length of Sabine Avenue. And per his report, his recommendation would be to address the one-way traffic issue. He felt that the signage, for the most part, was appropriate and met the standards for where wrong-way signage should be, with the exception of the driveway out of 201 Sabine. At that location, he is recommending that the borough install some signage, make sure people know when they come out of that driveway that they need to turn right and not left out of there. And then in regards to speeding on 201 Sabine, he would want us to do, because when we did the data collection, we only did it near the 201 Sabine property. He would want to see us collect some speed data on another portion of Sabine Avenue in order to get a better sense of how much speeding is going on the entire length of the road. And once he has that information, could actually make a recommendation on what we should do, if anything, to address speeding on Sabine Ave.
Can I ask, well, I have two comments. The first is, we've done this ad nauseum throughout the borough and on Iona for speeding too, because it is in fact, people play chicken, particularly when the bridge is open. But the majority of folks, and this is I think one of the policing issues, they're not speeding. 25 is the speed limit. It's too high for that street. There's nothing we can do about it. So there's nothing illegal about going 25. It just feels super fast and arguably is not appropriate, particularly around a playground. So I do wonder how much money we spend just to kind of replicate what we probably already know in different studies. And I did see the DVRPC just sent out their data from the tactical urbanism stuff. I don't know if you've seen that, but the non-stop, rolling stop, complete stop, and speeding data is pretty compelling. I wonder if perhaps we ask, I mean, we don't have the Public Safety Advisory Committee yet,
Right.
but perhaps, you know, the chief or the mayor or an officer or even one of our parking could attend the webinar on the 20th to look at, Kimberly Bizak's actually speaking at it, to look at a review of that data. They measured people who don't stop, who roll a stop and come to a complete stop at 3 different pop-up shops. Like, I'm wondering if before we recreate what we've done and kind of consistently gotten the same data, if we go another route into this environmental design approach. And I can share, did I send this all to you?
I don't think if you did, I apologize.
I may not have, I may have thought it, but I'll send it to you. John, if you're interested too, I'll send it. I wonder if we consider a different approach than what we continue to do.
Yeah. That sounds great for the speeding part. And I imagine I imagine everyone will be fine with the signage at 201 Sabine. And the other thing I forgot was in terms of parking on Sabine Avenue, the traffic engineer noted right now, parking is generally only on one side of the street, and did recommend the borough considering allowing parking on both sides of Sabine Avenue for 2 reasons. One, to help with speeding, because there'd be more of a visual deterrent to doing it with cars on both sides of the road. And number 2 is that if someone's coming down the road and they see cars parked on both sides all facing one direction, it becomes even more obvious that you should be going that direction. Plus, there isn't enough room to allow 2 cars to pass if you are going the wrong way in that event. I did actually get some feedback, because of course this information is put in our packets that go out to the public. One of the residents on Sabine Avenue did express a concern that I said I would share with the committee, that if we did allow parking on both sides of Sabine Avenue, to be sensitive to the area right in front of Sabine Park, out of concern for like children potentially darting around the street there. So my recommendation would be that we do the signage that the engineer suggested, and that we do when we do our big parking ordinance update, that we allow parking on the side of Sabine where it's no longer allowed, with the exception of the area right in front of Sabine Park on Sabine Ave.
Okay.
One other concern I would have is allowing parking across from driveways, because it makes it really tight to get out of there.
Okay, yeah, and
Yeah.
Bob, go ahead.
Mayor, with respect, that's like the condition that 80% of the
Yeah.
residents of the borough who have parking on both sides of the street face.
Yeah, and it actually slows traffic down to the point where I totally agree with you. And I think that the pop-up lane here on Haverford really demonstrated when you narrow the street, whether it with hay bales and a bike lane or cars, it slows traffic down. I mean,
Yeah,
that is
and
correct.
I've been listening to this argument since I had toddlers who ran out in the street, and I don't believe it. I don't buy it. I studied my own children. They're not the best behaved kids in the world, and in fact, I felt safer with my kids on the sidewalk when there were cars lining the street than I did when there weren't cars and the cars were traveling at a high rate of speed.
Agreed.
And it's not only that, it's not only just my feeling. I believe there's data that says that the sidewalks are safer when you have cars as a buffer, as a barrier between the moving traffic and the sidewalk. It's just common sense, also common sense. I think, with respect to the person's concern, I think I think that's fine. Let's keep a portion like of the roadway as dedicated not parking, or maybe so that people could maybe stop and drop off kids,
Okay.
right? Like as a sort of a stop and drop type space. But as you move towards, from the park entrance, towards Montgomery Avenue, it's always been a concern to me that people come off of Montgomery Avenue, they come onto Save Line Avenue, and they come at a high rate of speed because they can.
Mhm.
And if you have cars parking right up to the corner there, you slow that traffic a lot. And there's a parking concern up there. There's always like concerns about where people are going to park, from the law firm, where are people going to park from the businesses.
Mhm.
Who, like there's a gym up there, karate studio, they're always looking for parking. We can provide significantly more parking on Save Line, still keep a stop and drop spot in front of the playground. But I know I'm familiar, I've been listening to that concern, and with respect to those neighbors, I love those neighbors, but
Mhm.
it defies common sense for all of us who have had children.
Mhm.
Well, and I think, Bob, to your point though, but the data are pretty clear that,
The data.
that in fact narrowing the street slows traffic.
Yeah,
And is not going to prevent a kid from running out.
yeah.
To your point with the loading zone in front of the park, I do think having a spot to be able to let your kids or dump equipment, perhaps we even consider Jeff, who's done a fabulous job with the planters. You know, is there a way to still almost narrow that little park space with some of the planters that he's been doing? I
Kinda
think
like
we
they do
need
in
to
front of
use
the movie
evidence-based
theater.
decisions.
Yeah, right,
and-
exactly.
Like the way they do in front of the movie theater.
Absolutely correct. That's
Yeah.
exactly what I'm thinking.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, this sounds, so in terms of next steps, Samantha, would you say we could go ahead with your recommendation was the signage that's coming from the
Yeah.
engineer, plus,
Plus the parking that the engineer recommended. Now, to move forward with the parking, that would require an ordinance change. And I don't know, it might be a question for the parking committee whether we want to go ahead and do that on its own, or if we want to tie that in with any other parking ordinance updates we're thinking about doing.
I have one additional question.
go ahead, Bob.
I have one additional question. Maybe this would address the near neighbor's concern. Because I do get the hazard that exists for kids who maybe try to cross mid-block. And that if you're a kid who lives across the street from the park and you are crossing that road mid-block, that is hazardous. And I get why you'd be concerned about kids coming out between cars. That's quite serious. So I'm wondering if we might consider a mid-block crosswalk at the park, which would be kind of a way to, you know,
Mhm.
it's appropriate when you have a park, isn't it? Kind of to have a crosswalk?
You know, I could see
Maybe,
back
that's
at
gonna be a
the traffic
traffic
review they
engineer's
did
question.
of the Iona,
Yes.
and I think it's a traffic engineer, we had said, could you do a mid-block crosswalk in Iona to slow folks down?
Uh-huh.
And if I remember correctly, which I do, they said, the traffic engineer said, actually, it's not intuitive for a crosswalk to be mid-block, and it in fact poses some risk, where the natural place for a crosswalk really is at the end of the street, so they want folks to really walk to the end of the stop sign.
Yeah.
Now, maybe that has changed, because there has
Yeah.
been some time, but that's one where I think, again,
True.
we ask a traffic engineer, but the,
We have one at St. Margaret's. In fact, my wife was slowing to let somebody cross, and somebody came up behind her, honked their horn, passed her on the left, almost hit the pedestrian, and then parked in the church lot.
I think that's what they were saying.
And which
Yeah.
is to your point.
Yeah,
It's not intuitive.
It's not, yeah.
right. But if it were part of, I mean, again, this is why I think this, study that we could do with our advisory group on traffic calming, could really be really helpful, because you can imagine if it's a raised crosswalk, we've talked about some of these raised crosswalks.
Something.
It's a speed bump and a crosswalk. It might be more safe, yeah.
Because it is, I get kids running between cars across the street mid-block, that is dangerous. We have to think about it.
Kids running, jetting across the street is dangerous,
Yeah.
always, so.
So, let's see, the parking committee meets, that's Barbara, Bob, and I, that's meeting later this month.
I believe you're meeting in like a week and a half, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so I guess we could we could bring this suggestion to them.
Yeah, I like that. And if it's okay with this group, we'll go ahead and move forward with the signage that the traffic engineer suggested that we do. And we'll hold off on any other data gathering or anything like that until we have a chance to learn more about the DVRPC presentation on April 20th.
Can I say like that's, Cindy, I'm just saying that you recommend a different approach, attending the DVRPC conference, exploring what environmental tools might help to mitigate speed, and then area of parking on both sides of the street be evaluated further. Is that?
Yeah, in the parking committee. That,
okay, in the parking.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Well,
Rob,
go ahead, Andrea.
before we move on, I had a number of months ago submitted a request to review North Narberth Avenue and cars going the wrong way. Because I am still continuing to get complaints of cars going the wrong way. It's been months now that I mentioned it.
Yeah, go ahead, Samantha.
So, Mayor, as you've seen and heard in these committee meetings, we've had a lot of, issues getting the equipment set up to do the speed monitoring, speed and traffic monitoring. So I think we have it all worked out now, and now we've completed using that equipment on Sabine Avenue. Depending on what this committee thinks, whether or not we should deploy it there or if we should wait and see what the DVRPC thing says. I do think that it's now appropriate for us to potentially shift some attention to the concern that you raised about North Narberth Ave.
I also think, to your point though, once we get the raised crosswalks there and the outdoor dining becomes permanent and not the Jersey barriers, that will serve the purpose of that urban tactism that will slow traffic. Anyway, I don't know where infrastructure is in the raised pedestrian crosswalks, but.
Right, Cindy, it wasn't just a speed, it's I've viewed it over and over again myself. People come down Haverford and make a right onto North Narberth going the wrong way.
Yeah, the point is though with the tactical urbanism is that it slows you down enough that you see stuff. I agree with you, Andrew. I think I see people all the time that drive down that. So hopefully, again, some of those things that make you slow down also make you realize the giant do not enter and the fact that all the cars are facing one direction.
Well, so I'm wondering, the process that, Samantha, that you had laid out for reviewing traffic complaints using the traffic counters, that data would also inform any of the kind of environmental design choices, right? So it would be useful for both, say, signage decisions and
yeah, and there's no cost to the borough to do it. It's just I don't know how long it takes Public Works to set it up, but it doesn't sound like it takes that long to get it put up and out there. So yeah, we could certainly put deploy. We have one of the units. Well, both of the units had to go back to the manufacturer. So we've had the one on Sabine. The other one we should have back from the manufacturer today or Monday. So I think the one that we just got, the one we're going to get back from the manufacturer, I want to put back out at Windsor Avenue to gather data on potential speeding at like Windsor and Narbrook Park, that area. And then I'd like to take the one we have at Sabine right now and put it somewhere near the 100 block of North Narberth Ave and see what sort of data we get.
Okay, that sounds good.
What did we ever do with the data? I mean, we collected all that speed data from Conway and Price. And I bring this up because I think what we said was the average speed was something like 27. But again, it feels incredibly fast. Actually, Officer Belfie and I had that conversation. We were talking once there, and he actually said, like, why is there not a stop sign here? Because there's hedges, and while people are only going 27, it feels a hell of a lot faster because there's that straightaway. So I guess my question is, we didn't ever really do anything with that data, so I'm hesitant to continue to collect it without knowing what the solution is. If it comes back consistently, it's really not
Well, I think
40.
I think there is value in demonstrating that to the community, though. Even if we kind of intuitively know that, I don't know if residents necessarily have that same background. And I think even if, let's say we collect the data at, I'm not saying this is how it'll be, but let's just say if, if we collect data, well, at any road in the borough, and it comes back that the 80, this common term is 85th percentile speed is like 24, 25 or something like that, then at least we have a justification to the residents of why we're not like doing anything there.
So that's the purpose, that's fine, and it doesn't cost us.
Exactly.
And I might be asking an obvious question, but when we do have that, ultimately, if we're fortunate enough to get that study that examines like the whole network, multimodal network, and will they be looking at kind of the appropriateness of the intersections, like the stop signs, and would that be part of that proposal? Because I know traffic direction's an issue, but I was thinking, as to your point about stop sign intersections, it's like that might be a more appropriate intersection for a stop sign than some others that we have them at, and like so like if that could be part of that proposal to evaluate kind of where they're right, where they're wrong. I guess is that
well,
or maybe I'm not. Maybe it's obvious that that's what they're going to do.
I think.
Do you know, Samantha?
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, maybe talk about just 1 minute. Yeah.
That's our next. So let's just you're half step ahead of us. So, okay, so I think we're clear about our review process. One little tweak that we may want to make as a committee, or suggest as a committee, is when do we initiate this traffic review process? Is it when we receive just one complaint, or is there a higher threshold of, say, 4 complaints, or, So that's something we don't have to decide now, but as we get more and more of these complaints coming in, we may need to prioritize based on the number of complaints.
Yeah, I looked at, the borough engineer actually referred me to Swarthmore boroughs. They have an actual, I believe, either resolution or ordinance that codifies this process, which we might want to consider down the line, because right now our process is just a memo that I wrote, like 6 months ago. And as part of that, it does call for like a certain percentage of residents in the area or something like that. I forget the exact wording. So yeah, I think we should probably formalize the process at some point. And when we do that, maybe consider a higher threshold than 1 to do it. Otherwise, like you all may remember, like 5 months ago, we had like 11 things under that item. So
yeah, I just want to say this tongue in cheek. We should also include a provision for like the same neighbor saying it 12 times. That should also qualify.
Yeah, maybe some sort of time kind of thing where like once the thing has been evaluated, we will not evaluate it again for like 24 months or something.
Yeah, 40 years.
Okay. So yeah, we can come back to that. Well, I know this Ccdi grant is time sensitive, so why don't we go to that?
Sure. So where we're at with that is, myself and the borough engineer and traffic engineer met 2 weeks ago to kind of talk about our approach to how we want to, get the grant completed. One of the required steps in the grant is to meet with your county planning commission. And so we had a really great meeting on Monday with the Montgomery County Planning Commission, and got a lot of great feedback from them. Chloe was there, Matt Popek was there, and I forget that the third staffer was there, someone I hadn't worked with before. And part of the way this grant works is because it's through DVRPC, is that actually some folks from each county planning commission that DVRPC service is oversees is on the evaluation committee as well for the grants. So they had a lot of because they've reviewed these grants in the past, they had really great insight into what we should be doing with this one. And their main concern they had was the scope of work, and in particular the cost of the scope of work. So there's a soft cap of $100,000 on the project. So the scope of work we got from Panoni had an estimated cost of $150,000. So the question we posed to them was, well, what if the borough, I'm not saying we commit $50,000, but what if the borough offered to provide some sort of match above and beyond the $100,000? And they advised against that, whereas in most grants, it is desirable for the municipality, the more match the municipality can provide, the more competitive you are. For this grant program, there's only $1.2 million for the 5 Pennsylvania DVRPC counties. And they also mentioned that it's working a little different this year. So in the past, the way these sort of things worked is, the municipality was awarded one of these grants, and then you hired whoever you wanted, to actually carry out the grant program. Well, now DVRPC is actually overseeing the, they're going to have their own, engineer consultant working for them. That's going to carry out the scope of work in the grant on behalf of the municipality. So the concern was that DVRPC has only allocated, so much time and money for whoever they're using for this, then it doesn't matter if the municipality has more match or not. So their suggestion was to bring the scope of the project down to something that would fit in around $100,000. So me and our borough engineer and traffic engineer had to talk about what that would be and how we would do that. They did think that the portions of it related to complete streets and multimodal transportation were going to make the grant particularly competitive, because a big part of the grant, as we see with a lot of grants now, and I think we all agree is a kind of a good direction for them to go, is there's a component where you have to demonstrate how the grant is going to provide or improve the lives of underserved or otherwise disadvantaged populations. And I think one of the strongest arguments for our grant is that by allowing people to use transportation other than a car, which might be the most expensive way to get places, we're helping make the lives better of people who either can't drive or can't afford to drive, whether it's people under 18, people above a certain age where it's not safe for them to drive anymore, people who can't afford to drive. And they felt that was a really strong component of our grant. Not to say driving can't be a part of it, but that we really, if we're going to cut something, do not cut the multimodal part, nor do I think we would want to cut the multimodal part. Mm-hmm. So myself and Eric, our engineer, and Mike, our traffic engineer, are going to get together. I need to schedule a meeting with them probably sometime next week to figure out how to reduce the scope. But I'm open to any feedback, from the committee on how we do that, and then we can get it, finish writing it and get it submitted.
Okay, thank you. So you had given us in the packet, I think there was the update on the grant. Yeah, I see, right. So, okay, well that sounds, I don't know, what do you think? Are there priorities that we want to be sure to hold on to in the grant?
Definitely there are. I'm waiting to hear what
The good news,
the
good news about the grant that the engineer and traffic engineer emphasized to me is that they consider this a scalable project. So we can go as, part of the additional cost is by really doing deep dives into certain portions of it. And some of that we may be able to do on our own through our own traffic, data collection and that sort of thing. So I'm kind of thinking that's probably our opportunity to reduce. Sorry I didn't tell you this before you started.
That's really important. Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably our best opportunity to is to reduce the cost. And another thing that Matt Pope had, given his work he did with us with the parking study task force, was to make sure we don't repeat studies that we've already done in terms of the things that the parking study task force found and the Nelson Nygaard study found for us.
Right.
Okay, well I could start off with some seat of the pants comments.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sharpen this up a little.
I don't know that I'm sharpening, but I just have one thought.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad you mentioned that, it was, that we could, about the scalability of it. That's really interesting because it resolved a question I had in my mind already. It's like, I'm just doing this by the seat of my pants. It's like so much of the borough works, right? And so we sort of we don't need to have them study things that we kind of know work, right? So then you go, well, okay, so let's just what if we were to focus on what doesn't work? And you start to kind of create a kind of like, you could almost create a color, we could probably do it with magic markers, create a color map of where it's sort of doesn't work and where it really doesn't work. You know, and start to see where sort of like the cooler to hotter zones are. And my hunch is that it's like, you know, it's the primary roads, not as much the secondary, the tertiary roads. So, you know, it's North Narberth Avenue, it's Halford Avenue, it's Windsor Avenue, it's Essex, North Narberth. You know, the Essex because it has an intersection at Montgomery. It has the bus. Like it's, you know, it's kind of those things. And then like, how do you deal with multimodal appropriately? You know, or how do you deal with all abilities of people navigating and using transportation around the street? So it's like, so it's kind of transportation centered. And then, but I think in the terms of priorities, I think it's really important that we look at direction of flow in relationship to parking and all of these environmental kinds of, what do you call it? Tactical, we used to call it traffic calming, but tactical urbanism, which I think is kind of good because, you know, like how it, yeah, so that's my initial thoughts.
So I'm just looking at the list that we have of these different items. So,
Yeah.
so you're saying directional traffic flow is one we want to keep in there. I mean, the
And
parking.
parking and traffic calming.
Okay, definitely traffic calming. Is the parking overlapping with Nelson?
I think it is a little bit, yeah, so I think that's one of the big opportunities, talking with, that when I talk with Eric and Mike, that they can probably scale down the proposal a little bit.
And just to
yeah.
kind of like offer an image of how that works with direction of flow and traffic calming. It's like, there's boroughs around Pennsylvania like where they've done sort of like back-in angle parking. Like they've done, you know, I don't know if we want to do back-in angle parking anywhere, but it's a kind of technique that you get a lot of bang for the buck sometimes if the residents are willing to do it. And, you know, we try to.
And it nearly doubles
Yeah.
your parking.
And what Cindy's referring to is one time, like a bunch of us like got in our cars and we angle parked Halford Avenue down here by the playground to see what would happen. And it kind of worked, you know, like you can angle park cars right along Halford Avenue by the playground. We're thinking, well, it could increase capacity. And, you know, and it was a thought experiment, right?
Yeah, it was.
Well, maybe the parking piece could just be very limited. You know, like if there's a suggestion for like a more efficient parking arrangement in some location. But we don't need like I mean, the way it's written.
Oh, I see.
Existing on-street and off-street parking will be identified in areas for potential parking expansion, contraction.
Yeah, like again, I think gets into some of the stuff that Nelson Nygaard already did for us and what the parking committee is already talking about and figuring out.
And they certainly identified the hot spots.
Absolutely. That's an easy one to.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the traffic calming seems to be such a big priority, and that's connected with the multimodal and the directional traffic flow.
So it sounds like the most important things to keep are the aspects that examine multimodal transportation, one-way traffic flow, tactical urbanization / traffic calming.
For a while in the, like in the early aughts in the Ozzies in the borough, there was a lot of discussion about cut-through traffic, because I guess it kind of like at some point it got much worse. And I just wondered if that's really like, we ever, you know, in some ways cut-through traffic's desirable because like the people shop at your stores. On the other hand, like, are we really, this region is so interconnected, like, are we ever going to stop people from using, like, the roads around Harvard, like, unless we build a wall? So maybe it's more just so I think this is appropriate to, like, rather than talking about how do you avoid cut-through traffic, is how do you manage it?
How do you manage it? I agree.
Yeah.
I guess my one comment was really, and not specific to what this should be scoped, but rather just a comment or a narrative on the multimodal, which I think is so important, is to point to really, I think, our commitment to aging in place. And the evidence I would provide to support that is our support of ADU development, how in conditional use we have advocated for studios as a way to help both seniors who want to age in place. You know, we really have evidence on how we've legislated things to allow people to age in place for that comprehensive plan. Then I would also like to see us speak to the fact that we are a community that is trying to embrace a diversity in lots of different things, but physical, intellectual, I would point to GET as really an anchor institution at this point, to PIN, Philadelphia Independence Network, as an important community organization, to underscore like the significance in multimodal transportation. And again, I don't know if there's a place for that in that narrative, but I do think there is evidence that this is an important part of how we legislate and our community organization.
Yeah.
That sounds like a priority for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So, you'll have ideas when you meet with the engineer, but I mean, some of these, it just strikes me like public transportation might be under the category of what we do really well already.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we need additional studies.
Well, what we can do is, thankfully, we'll get one more public, crack at this, so to speak. So the grant isn't due until late April, and council will have to, like any kind of thing like this, would have to approve a resolution committing us to apply for it and all that. And I think by the time that council does that, I'll have had a chance to chat with Mike and Eric, and we'll have more information on kind of where we're at with it.
Do you mean like you'll come, like after you talk with your staff and the guys who really are like sort of on the ground, like you'll come back and sort of say these are their impressions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great.
And we identified
That's
funds
something that
to
never
put
used to
towards some
happen.
assistance in writing these grants. Is this an?
No,
Oh,
you're right.
no,
It's really
actually,
nice.
council's
You're right.
talking about that on Thursday.
Oh gosh, so you have not had any support?
No. They've been, Panoni's been doing most of it, and
Okay.
it's just coming out of our engineering budget.
Okay, so we need to talk about that, then maybe in FNA, because again,
Yeah, no, that's on,
I'm
yeah.
really aware of how many, I mean, we have so many grants that are incredible, but it's like, oh, it's
Yeah.
due at the end of April. It's April 1st.
Yeah, that's on the agenda for council on Thursday.
Okay.
Right. Well, this is a good point. We should be aware this is kind of the peak grant
Yeah.
submission season. So we should be aware of, our manager's workload. And I don't know if there's more we can do as a
No,
council.
can we help her? I mean,
Well, I think at this point probably, well, I think you all are helping because aren't some of you doing the county thing?
we're going to talk about that.
Okay, yeah, so, the work that council has offered on the county, on the COVID money from the county, that's great. Panoni is doing a lot of the work on this Ccdi Grant. There's another opportunity that we're potentially working with Montgomery Conservancy on. And then the other stuff that had to be done, the state and county grants that we applied for the building upgrades, that's already been taken care of and submitted, so that's off the plate for now. And yeah, I don't see any further relevant grant opportunities coming our way until maybe in the fall when PICO has their Green Region grant program open up. And actually, no, we will need to talk in a minute here about, or a few minutes here, about the DEP and PICO money for EV chargers that the borough has gotten in the past.
Mhm.
But I think we might be able to get a lot of help from the, because they have an interest in this, from the company we will be buying the chargers from. I think would be willing to help write the grants.
Right, right there on
Oh, right.
paycheck.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Interesting. Well,
That's great.
Yeah, but on Thursday, with
Similar
council, we can
to
talk a lot
yeah.
more about all that.
Okay.
Okay, great. So we could move ahead then to action items. We have a few things here we want to be able to discuss maybe in the next 10 minutes or so, just keeping an eye on the clock so we have a little time for the EV chargers at the end.
I'm sorry, I'm just cloudy on one thing.
Yeah.
Because there's timing's critical for this grant. And you were describing a process where you'd go and then you'd come back. Like, how is that going to work within the time frame?
Oh, well, let me be more clear about that. Yeah, thanks for
Okay.
asking that. So what would happen is, and we're still going to move forward with writing, the grant. So it's not like we're not going to not be doing anything while we hash that out. I think there's a lot of the parts of the grant, probably 80-85% of it could be written without having all that completely finished up. So we're still going to be working on the grant in between those time periods.
Okay, but I mean, by the time we have another public health and safety committee meeting, the grant.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so
Well, we can do
PHS will
already,
not get
right?
another discussion, but Borough Council will.
Gotcha, good,
Yeah.
thank you.
And are we gonna kind of formally recommend as a committee then, that we've identified traffic calming, multimodal, is that, or are we gonna have a full council?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that you're hearing that feedback here,
Yeah.
and that'll guide the,
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I think we're fine with the discussion we've had, yeah.
Just say we've had a discussion. Yeah,
And
okay.
recommend, because
And
we
recommend.
seem to be in consensus
Got it.
Yeah.
as a committee,
Okay.
okay.
okay, so 5.1 here, establish civil service list for police. So, I don't know if Samantha or the chief, if you want to give us some context.
Yeah, well, actually, I'll let the chief speak to that, and then maybe if there's anything else I have to add afterwards, I'll be happy to tackle on the end, chief.
Sure. Okay, thank you, Samantha. So, just to let everybody know, we have not had a civil service list established for hiring police for about 2 years right now. The last one we had expired in May, June of 2020. Right now, we have 6 officers total, of course. 5 of the 6 are represented by civil service. 2 of the 5 officers are now vested. All right, so that means that they can pretty much leave if they decide to do so. In addition to that, we have 2 other officers, aside from those numbers, that are actually going to approach their 10 years this very year. One, in fact, this month. That means that they're going to be 2 years out from vesting. So as of right now, it's in our best interest to get a civil service list established, just in case we have to hire, if we have to replace people or hire more people. We really should have an active civil service list to go to. When one expires, we should always have another one to go to, because you never know what's going to happen. We've had officers take injuries during the past 4 years during my tenure. Thank God none of them have been career enders. But that's another factor to think of as well. You could have an officer go out on a disability pension. So right now, based on all the information that we have, everything I have in front of me, and believe me, I know this department inside and out. Right now, in terms of not having a civil service list, we are completely behind the 8 ball. Something could drop tomorrow, and things could change dramatically in this police department. And we would not have the coverage, we would not have the bandwidth to provide the police services that we do. So what I would like the committee obviously to consider and to take further, unless Samantha has some other input, is to really actually get this moving forward so we can bring in the experts to apply this test, written, the oral, and then have an established eligibility list if we need to go to it.
I think the main question I'm going to have, sorry, before I turn it over to you all, is put my borough treasurer hat on for a second here. What are are there any costs associated with maintaining that list, and like what sort of costs we'll be looking at?
There's costs associated, obviously, with giving the list, because we would have to probably go with a third-party vendor, obviously, McCain Associates, to bring the testing in. You have to schedule, obviously, the Civil Service Commission to give the oral. In addition to that, there's always labor-intensive hours with management. That every dollar has a value to it, as you know. So, of course, there's cost. However, at the same time, what we're going to bear in the back end is going to pale in comparison to what we put in the front end if we're caught. If we're basically caught in a hard position where we all suddenly have less officers than we have now. We have a 4-platoon system. I'm always advocating for more officers as this community grows, as the population grows. We're seeing more police reports right now. Granted, I'm very encouraged during the past 4 years that the community has really taken hold of our philosophy. We want you to report stuff to the police, which I think has led to an increase in reporting as well. That we have more people that are more willing to go up and do a walk-in report, that are calling us, that are dialing 911, and we are getting more response because we want to track information in real time. We want to have that information. And it helps us disseminate and deploy better, obviously. That's a big factor. Planning, strategic planning, has a lot to do with the intel and the knowledge that we have in our record management system. However, at the same time, as you know, the projects, they're starting to come to completion. 114 Forest. The one at 203 Haverford, 100 Forest Avenue. These things are going to be coming to completion, and our population is going to increase. And, actually, as the virus started to die down, we started to see more and more activity in the borough. I applaud everybody on council for actually approving 2 parking controllers, because I think that's another factor. It's a side issue from civil service, but that's another factor where we really have to think forward about holding those gaps and holding that line, because one full-time person just wasn't really a sustainable model.
Rob, can I make a suggestion?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think this is actually a nice task for the start of our police advisory committee to take a look at, because there are some questions that arose last time when I was on the civil service, such as, for example, do you want to require Act 120? So in other words, we have the requirement that you have gone through the police academy and then you come to us. I can give an example. We lost a phenomenal candidate because they had not yet been through an Act 120. There are some municipalities who will support that with the right candidate. You know, is that something civil service should we look at, particularly in a time where there are nationally abysmal levels of police recruitment? I mean, Philadelphia just did their recruitment from the initial meeting to the actual testing and passing, it was less than 1%, right? So this is a national issue. I think we charge our police advisory committee to do a search. An example, there is also a movement of strategically hiring women to address some of like larger cultural issues with policing. Perhaps there's also, and I don't know, something analogous to as veterans get a certain amount of points just by the fact that they're a veteran on their test. Is there a way to do that with, let's say, women or minorities or, you know, other ways that we should be considering potentially leading here in Narberth? So we could begin with the police advisory committee taking a look at our hiring practice. You know, we flipped. We required a college degree, then we didn't, then we did again. Let's have that advisory committee advise us and then bring it to the civil service just to even begin that list.
So, I mean, there is some latitude there, right, in terms of what's required.
Civil service is civil service. An eligibility list pops up and then you have to follow the rule. There's usually rules. It could be a rule 1, a rule 2, rule 3. It depends on, but we are a civil service community, a civil service borough. In addition to that, you always want to get the most qualified person in law enforcement. That's the simple fact of the matter. Also, if you look at what's happened in Philadelphia, they're offering what I understand to be up to $10,000 in a bonus to recruit police officers now. So aside from anything you just discussed, they're looking for people, period. They can't even get people, they can't even retain people. I think one of the other biggest challenges that's coming, unfortunately, from a lot of the fallout from the defund the police movement is this negative connotation that's carried in law enforcement. And it's unfortunate and it's sad. And it's a shame that the policing has been attacked the way it has, because in addition to the problem that you're having with recruitment, it's retention. Police officers are leaving the job in mass droves. So attrition is not only just normal attrition anymore, it's people leaving the job prematurely, getting fed up, not wanting to deal with all the stuff that we've seen for years. They're tired of it. They don't want to deal with it. They're leaving early. When they have eligibility for pension, they leave. It's just the way it goes. So as much as we're talking about recruitment, one of our biggest challenges is retention that I see in this industry, because people are departing this profession. This is a noble profession. It's unfortunate that it's happened. I think, you know, leadership, cops count, but leadership matters. And eventually that reputation will be built back up again through positive thinking and community-connected initiatives. However, at the same time, I think one of the challenges that any police department has, whether it's tall or whether it's small, a big department or a small department, major in a city or small, like in Narberth or any other county, any other municipality within Montgomery County or Bucks County, you're going to have a hard time retaining employees. And one of the other problems that we're seeing is, unfortunately, in Philadelphia, you know, there is no dismantling, there is no breaking down of crime. There is only displacement. It is moving away from the city into the collar counties. Case in point on the carjacking that occurred here on February 21st, on President's Day. It is getting displaced into the counties. And that's one of the biggest challenges that people are seeing right now, not only in Montgomery County, but in all the collar counties. That crime is no longer getting broken down. There is no longer a situation where people are staying incarcerated. 7% of your population can commit 70% of your crime, and at multiple levels. The problem that we're having is that we are now seeing, not only as an example with the job that happened on February 21st, but multiple other offenses. It could be something as simple as a theft from auto that is occurring in our borough. Now, granted, I understand that a lot of people leave their cars open. They leave their doors open. We get that. We haven't found one broken window since I've been here. I'm sure it has happened in the past, but not one time since I've been here have we seen one broken window. It's always a car door that's left open. But ultimately, what do you have? You have basically crime increasing in these counties because there is no finalization on a crime in collateral in adjoining jurisdictions.
I
That
think our advisory committee would be.
Yeah, this is what I hear your concern that we should have a list, and I wonder what the timeline could be, because the council, where have we formally approved, I forget where we are with the advisory.
That's on Thursday.
That's this,
Yeah.
okay. So, assuming that goes forward, that could be in place within a month or so?
Yeah.
People could be
Time to get
appointed.
Yeah, you'll need to recruit and
Yeah.
appoint people. So
Maybe
maybe 2
beginning of
months.
June.
Just have a practical question.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been through this process practically with every officer on the force, where we've gone through the civil service list and then they've been hired. But I don't remember actually what that time frame is from the day you say you need an officer to the creation of the list, to the hiring of the officer. But I believe in the past, we never had a list teed up. We always went and said, like, time for civil service to create the list when it was time to hire. And so even when it was short notice, that's kind of how it was. But I don't remember, do you have any sense of the time frame? Or
It was 6 months easily.
was it last time?
I do.
Yeah, you were, right, you were,
Yeah.
right.
I do also wonder though, if we
You were
should,
on the Civil Service Commission.
I was,
Yeah.
at some point though, if this is an executive conversation question, only because it has to do with negotiation of our contract, with the FOP as well, which I would.
If that's the
talk-
case, then maybe we shouldn't
that-
probably put that question out there.
Okay, yeah, that's why I'm wondering at what point we hold off on this conversation to talk about, what does our contract say versus, I'm rest assured that we have such a good relationship with Lower Merion, so if there was, for God forbid, a reason that 2 officers were out, we have already an existing partnership and relationship, so we're not in a crisis mode. I would caution us to maybe halt this, because I would like to review that contract. And I know we can't do that publicly.
So just-
I guess my concern is, and I think this is kind of what the chief was getting at, like, if we had someone, move on somewhere else, or, again, heaven forbid, get a serious injury or something like that, we're looking potentially at overtime hours for our department to have to spend, and then also there's the workload on our officers. And in terms of Lower Merion, our contract with them, dictates a certain number of hours that they provide, and the model that they're, wanting us to move to is a model where any hours in excess of that, we're gonna have to pay them for. So
Right.
either way, whether it's our officers doing overtime or Lower Merion filling in, it is gonna be an extra cost to the borough. And Lower Merion Township has a great police department. I'm very thankful for the services they provide to this borough. I do think that we would probably all agree, and I know council had a big, conversation about this near the end of last year, is at the end of the day, like, the best service is gonna come from officers who know our community and know our people.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I think that's why I thought it was good that we have this discussion today, because I think the cost of doing this are probably,
Yeah.
and I don't know,
Well, could I just propose a timeline, and we'll see if this kind of satisfies, everybody. What if, we begin the work of the advisory committee in June, assuming it's approved by council. And then their first assignment, as Cindy's suggesting, is to review the criteria for forming the civil service list in June, July, as a first summer task at their first meeting, so that then this committee, in say its August meeting, could review that recommendation, and then this process could potentially begin in the fall.
Yeah,
Would that timing work?
Yeah.
Listen, I think the sooner the better. I think the one thing we need to take into consideration is we start to just have those side conversations, and I won't take up too much of people's time. Remember, Lower Merion itself is having their own staffing issues right now. Okay, so they are having their challenges with covering us. They are challenges with covering their township. Cindy, the one thing you said, nationwide, it's everywhere.
Yeah,
Okay, so-
luckily, we're a really attractive place to work. We're
Yeah.
not Philadelphia.
Mhm.
Folks are coming to places like us, from areas. But I think it behooves us to really think about that process, because we want to hire the right person. To your point, we want to hire the right person.
We want to have the right person, and also to remember, there are municipal police officer guidelines established by the state. So not only do you have to look at the civil service rules, you also have to look at, the state standards that are set by the state police. And also remember, we are a department that is not a training ground. We are a training ground locally, but we are not a training ground police department. So in other words, we don't necessarily have the bandwidth to say, listen, we want to hire you and we're willing to send you to a police academy, a municipal police academy in Montgomery County that's going to take you 11 months to complete. We don't have that time affordability. That's why we are a lateral transfer police department. We take in people who are qualified. For example, case in point, Officer Dan Dutton. He came well qualified. He was currently a police officer in Darby. He was a graduate of the Delaware County Police Academy and also a graduate of Westchester University. And look at the end result. It's been here now for 4 years.
Bob wanted to.
Yeah, I just want to flesh something out. Like, I get how if the council says, yes, let's build the civil service list, then it engages the Civil Service Commission and the process starts. It's like it's a well-traveled path. What's the path look like and what's the process with this new advisory commission? Like what actually will they be making what will they be doing sort of in June, July, and August that will then feed on the front end the task for the Civil Service Commission? I just want to get what that task is.
Yeah.
What my vision is?
Yeah.
So I would ask them to research. There are municipalities that are looking at strategically hiring female officers for a large number of reasons. I can send some stuff if folks are interested. Is there a possibility, just like we add the 10 points for veterans, is there a possibility to do that, let's say, for women? I don't know the answer to that. Can we have the Police Advisory Commission look at a debate that we had in civil service? To your point, we're not a training institution. We went back and forth and saying, but do we want to? Do we want to hire an officer, in fact, where we do invest in that Act 120? Because we want folks to learn Narberth policing. Right now that we have you, John, I'd say yes. I mean, I was like, for, because we didn't have strong police leadership. Quite honestly, is there a real benefit to having a new police officer that's going to come and be mentored by John and learn policing via Narberth? I'm not on that commission anymore, so I would leave that to the Police Advisory Commission and the Civil Service to make that recommendation.
Can you just Act 120?
I'm sorry, the Police Academy.
Act 120 is police.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like having gone through the Police Academy. Additionally, I think that the Police Advisory Commission can look at where we do have some real autonomy is in that oral exam, where the civil service comes up with the oral exam questions and then scores it. Perhaps that Police Advisory Commission can help develop some of those questions that would be, really, I don't think that would be a council question, quite honestly. I think that work would go right to the Civil Service Commission.
So you think that we can get specific about what's on the examination?
So we developed, the oral exam and
The oral.
I'm sorry, we being the Civil Service Commission.
Okay.
So those type of processes that we can look where we do have, to the chief's point, it is a standardized process, but there are places and spaces where we can consider, do we want to reconsider requiring a college degree given the policing status? I would say yes, but that is something perhaps that the advisory committee and the civil service may want to revisit.
Okay. So
You could actually change that definition too, because I think our current language says college degree. You could actually, start to flesh that out a little and say 2-year degree, 4-year degree. You could go in that direction too, because it's very vanilla right now, the way it's written. It just says college degree. Well, that can mean a lot of things.
Do we want to say no college degree, we'll put in X amount of dollars because we want you to go and take classes? So there's a lot that we can flesh out to.
So what I see is this is a perennial, this is perennial work. Like the borough's going to continue to do this after we're all gone. We're going to have a civil service commission. We're going to be doing police hiring. We've done police hiring before. This goes on forever and ever. I'm just trying to make sense of we could just say let's have the Civil Service Commission create the list and have the advisory committee begin their work advising that, you know, because this is just going to keep rolling forever. On the other hand, there's kind of like an inflection point where we're creating an advisory committee. And in this inflection point, it's kind of like it almost starts to kind of create some purpose and power for the creation of this committee. So like, yes, we could just go straight to the civil service process, but we're also creating this new citizen board now. And like by giving it a beat or two, like by waiting a couple months, it kind of gives that new board an opportunity to engage, like kind of right on the front end of something that we're going to start doing more. Like that's going to be like, so it's kind of gives that committee some traction and like a handle.
Yeah.
That's my only thought.
Real solid.
Yeah, I think it's fine. Yeah, the only thing I would be worried about is obviously you have two groups doing basically, you know, the same thing. Like we do have a civil service commission. We can certainly understand that there's interest in there, but you know, we having two groups doing the same thing. We already have an independent group. As a matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, I know Cindy was a part of it. When I first came here, it was much different. Obviously, there's different members now, but that's what they are. That's what they've done. And recently, they just established that with the sergeant's promotional exam too, so they're effective.
Well, that goes back to my earlier question, is like, what is their role in the process prior to the Civil Service Commission?
I mean,
creating the list.
I see it as, you know, when we talk about this police advisory committee, we're thinking of them as kind of a research arm, you know, and it's just a committee that has a little bit more space and time to do kind of a, you know, a bigger look at what surrounding communities might be doing. And then the civil service can take it from there, but it's just an initial step that I think could be helpful.
It's getting more voices in the process. It's creating more of a context within which the Civil Service Commission's acting as like, it's like a little broader community.
So in this example,
Yeah.
I would say, you know, because council, we're at the end of this process, keep in mind. So as the EAC does research and makes recommendations to the council, in this example, the PAC is doing research and making recommendations to the Civil Service Commission. Right, because we're really at the end. We get that list, I think we give, what, 3 to council. So that's kind of how I see it. Again, in this example, the PAC is doing a lot of the heavy lifting and research.
Like, so EAC was a thing that like there's already like at the Commonwealth level, there's guidance about how a community EAC works. Is there that kind of like Commonwealth guidance around how a PAC works too? Like,
Yes.
is it like
Well,
There's lots
is
of
it a defined body with a task and a?
not formalized, but they
Okay.
are everywhere.
Yeah, just so we have our semantics correct here.
Yeah.
So the borough code outlines and like the municipality, like there's actual legislation that says if you have an environmental advisory committee, this is the number of members you can have, this is what they can do, this is their terms. I am not familiar in the borough code with that, but not to say there aren't examples from other municipalities and places we can draw from.
It's like that existed within the borough code when we created the EAC.
Yeah.
Just like when we created a human relations commission, it also was like,
Right,
it was sort of like we said, well, it's time for Narberth to have a human relations commission. This is done in other places. We want to have one, and we initiated that. Same thing we did with the EAC. So in some ways, I just wanted to bring this, I want to flesh it through a little bit. Like, so with this PAC, where do we create that kind of,
so what
creates
needs
the
to
backing
happen,
for it,
what needs to happen with it
Yeah.
is, again, on Thursday, council's going to kind of talk about these parameters based upon last month's PHS meeting where we talked about it. Council's going to need to create a resolution that outlines, like, this is the membership, this is their terms, this is the purpose of and duties of this committee.
Right.
But is there any backing?
No.
Like, not yet.
Well, I mean,
So we're groundbreaking.
well, there are other examples, and
Yeah.
it's allowed by, the solicitor has reviewed how, you know, other boroughs have done it.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
so other
yeah.
boroughs have done that.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
Yeah. We're not
Yeah.
groundbreaking.
It's just that there's no kind of
great,
state
okay. No,
guidance.
I'm not challenging the idea, I just want to like understand it more, that's all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm looking at the clock. I know we're now over time, so I don't know, Samantha, if there's anything urgent, you know, from section 5 there? Or those items could wait?
Well, one of them, Arbor Day can't wait for PHS, but I don't know how much, this committee really needs to, I think it's pretty straightforward, like, we want to do Arbor Day, we want to be a part of Tree City.
Yeah,
Council will approve the resolution to do it, and
yeah,
there we go.
yeah. No, I would support that.
I think there's a discussion needed for that.
Yeah.
And Mayor Deutsch, have you thought about joining as a mayor's proclamation or something for because I think there was an implied invitation from the Shade Tree Commission, or an invitation from the Shade Tree Commission to attend Arbor Day and have a proclamation, because that also creates the ability for us to become a tree city.
Mhm.
Sure. I'll take a look at it. Just when is it? Remind me again.
It's Friday, April, whatever that is, the 29th, I think. Is it the 29th? I don't have it.
Yeah, we'll send you the date.
Yeah, and you know what, I'll talk to you offline about it. And
Okay.
see if I can help you get more information. And I know the manager, well, I'll help you get the information.
Yeah, I created a Tree City in my last job, so.
Yeah, Manager Ryan is expert on this.
Sure.
Okay, so then 5.2, is that something we need to discuss now, or could we move that to May?
Can we get to 6.1?
Yeah, 6.1 I'm hoping we could still do today. Why don't we go to the EV charging?
Sure. So per my memo, I think we're making a lot of great progress on that. Myself and Flo, our electric vehicle charger provider, had a follow-up meeting with Pico. So Pico, after some discussions with them, they ultimately decided that while they are not comfortable with us putting chargers directly on the utility poles, they are fine with allowing us to connect the EV chargers to the electric running from the utility poles. And we're only able to do that actually because of the LED upgrade that we did, because that power that was previously being pulled by the street light is now, doing the LED light and can do a vehicle charger. So, we're actually would be the first community where Pico would really, kind of do a program like this.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really exciting, I think, for the borough and for Pico and for Flo. Myself and Flo had a meeting on Wednesday with our electrician who did the chargers we did before, and talked through what information he would need. And so basically what we just need to do is, now that Pico has said that it's almost like good and bad that Pico said we can't mount them to the utility poles, and that the cost will be a little bit higher, but we have a lot more flexibility now on where to potentially put the chargers if we're not mounting them directly to the pole.
Mm-hmm.
Because before we had to find utility poles where the pole was on the other side between the road and the sidewalk, which is kind of rare actually in Harbor. So myself and Flo are actually going to meet on April 8th. We're going to drive around the borough again, finalize the list of where the chargers would be. We're thinking anywhere from like 4 to 8 is what we would want to do. Again, with the goal being to provide charging for residential properties that don't have off-street parking primarily. And we'll get that list finished up, and then our electrician can then give us a price quote for it. And then in terms of paying for it, we can talk more about that later, but everyone seemed pretty confident that the DEP money is still out there that we got last time.
Yeah,
Plus,
that's the bulk side of money.
Plus, Pico has started a new program, whereas before we only got $1,000 from them. They're now offering $2,000 per charger for make-ready costs, and and I think we would be very competitive for that funding. I think at our next meeting I'll have the final list. I'll have an estimated cost from the electrician, and then we can move forward with applying for service applications with Pico and applying for the grant funding from DEP and Pico, which the electrician would handle the meter application and all that with Pico. Flo would do a lot of the work, it sounds like, on the DEP and PICO grant applications. So yeah, I think it'd be really great for the borough.
Who owns and maintains the equipment?
We would.
Okay, because I noticed, like, I've been using the Flow charger on Essex Avenue, and I noticed that somebody keeps punching out the glass.
Oh my goodness.
And,
that happened
Right.
again?
Oh, we changed that out recently.
so
Yeah.
is that a, maybe I'm missing, maybe I'm reporting to you something that's already been repaired, but I'll go by and look if it's still
yeah,
punched
so
out, I'll let you know.
the borough does have to
So,
pay for
yeah,
that.
so, and what about, like, say, a cut hose or a, that's the borough's.
That is, yeah.
Okay, and we have the capacity through our Public Works Department to handle that.
For the most part, I know, like, for the broken front panel, we had to, like, from Flow, we had to order a new glass panel to go in there, and then, yeah, Public Works would have done the repair. And then in past meetings, I've shared the design of the model we would use. It's actually a different sort of charger than what we've done already. It's one where the cord is up on like a 10-foot pole, so that way it can reach around the car.
It's retractable.
Oh, like, that's nice, yeah.
And the actual charger unit itself is within like this protected kind of thing. And in order to open it, you like swipe your card, or you use the app on your phone. If you're like a customer, you can't just open it unless you have some kind of account with the charger service, and then it opens, and then you can get it out and do
I guess I'd like to see us build in the replacement cost to the comprehensive budget. I guess you probably will, but just so it becomes a line item now, and we see it coming. Yeah.
I agree. I think if once we do these, we'll have enough of them where there'd be enough money involved in where it needs to be a budget item. Yeah, that's a really good suggestion.
And I don't want to open this particularly at the end of the meeting, but if we are seeing a repeated vandalism to these, are there Ring doorbells? Do we need surveillance cameras? And again, I know that's a larger conversation. I just want to maybe put a pin in that.
Well, it's vandalism, the borough property should be reported.
Agreed. Is there Ring data? Do we need, if it's a repeating issue, to think about surveillance there? But
yeah, I think we can see what happens, and if vandalism becomes a rampant issue with them, then yeah, we should definitely have
Can we
that
insure them?
conversation. We could, but honestly, I mean, short of someone completely destroying one of them, like filing the insurance claim wouldn't be, the impact to our insurance wouldn't be worth it.
Okay, yeah, just, I mean, I thought maybe Flow would had a policy or something, there's like just replacement, like some kind of replacement thing or something. But
No, that's just really just part of our
Warranty,
liability, our
yeah.
property liability insurance, yeah. Now, if someone totaled one, we're talking, like $5-10 grand to replace it, then yeah, we would definitely file an insurance claim for that.
Okay.
Okay.
which would be a pretty major crime too.
Yeah, like someone pretty much would literally have to like intentionally almost drive their car in one, yeah.
Because these are, what's the replacement cost on one that the borough would own?
We're probably looking at about 10 grand to completely replace one of them, yeah.
Okay,
Well, at least on the ones we have right now, they ended up being about 10 grand each.
gotcha.
And again, I will emphasize, thankfully the borough didn't have to actually pay anything for it.
Yeah.
Right.
Because PICO, DEP, and then NIDA, those funds paid for the two of them.
So, okay, well, I think for our May meeting, we can discuss the ICA training and also the CAP update. I've been talking to Jesse Lytle, so we're going to try to schedule some time for him to visit us in the May meeting. Also, the Shade Tree Commission has been in touch that they would like to bring some recommendations to our committee. So, so I think we could stop here, and then we'll continue on in May.
So I just want to, my apologies to our traffic engineer. I did not see him waiting in the waiting room.
Oh, goodness.
And also, I don't think I shared with them our updated meeting time. So Mike, I owe you twice, because we actually changed the meeting time to 8 a.m.
Yeah, I just, you did send an email that said that, but my calendar appointment still had 9. I apologize. I tried to get in a little bit ago. I apologize for, not saying. I've been sitting here since 7:45 in my office, so I could have chimed in, but I missed that. I apologize.
Well, no, I'm glad to see you this morning, Mike, and I'll follow up with you and Eric. We had a real good chat about the priorities in terms of scaling back. I talked to the committee about scaling down.
Oh, great, yeah.
So I'll follow up with you later today about all that.
Awesome, great.
Okay, all right, well, thank you. Thank you.
Great meeting, yeah, I did great in this one.
And I just want to make sure, real quick before we adjourn, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
just make sure, the chief sent out to everyone, yesterday, the status of command report, and you have a physical copy of it as well.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. All right, well, this meeting is adjourned. We'll see you all in May.